All right, so welcome everyone to our April painting project, and we're continuing our virtual trip around the world. Last month we were in Oregon. We've now traveled up to Alaska, and thanks very much to Marcia, one of our members, for the kind sharing of her Alaska scene. And as you know, we put a number of different Alaskan scenes candidates to the popular vote on Patreon here, and this is the one that you voted for, and it's a super scene as well. We discussed this at length on our Zoom call yesterday. Those of you that were on that, or if you've seen the recording of that Zoom call, where we do go through all the ins and outs and people's comments and how they might tackle the scene. And some interesting things came out of that talk. And the main one for me, I always get really good suggestions when we all get together and everyone's got a different view on as regards composition and things to remove and things to add in. Some of the key things that came out from the call. So right in the middle of the scene, if you hadn't noticed it, this is the exit glacier on the Harding ice field in Alaska. And it's not very prominent there in the middle, that kind of sort of tongue of ice coming down between the two mountains, left and right. So Bruce had a good idea, which I'm going to follow, in that cropping the left-hand side, you're going to move the glacier there in the middle over to the left. I'm going to make that glacier just a little bit more prominent, a little bit larger than it is in the scene. Try and make it a little bit of a focal point together with its soft reflection below. So I'm going to crop the left, make the glacier a little bit larger, keep the waterline, the horizon roughly where it is. The sky, also another good suggestion, trying to get a little bit of contrast between the snow and the sky. In the photo, in the source photo, there's quite a lot of cloud cover there. We can see little patches of sky, but maybe it'd be nice to imagine that the clouds are a little bit higher up and we've got a bit more blue sky contrasting against the white snow of the mountains left and right. Of course, the white snow is not white. It's going to be contaminated with all sorts of different colors of things going on, the rocks, the sky. So more on that later on as regards the color scheme. Mountains left and right, we've got a little bit of, as we come lower down, a little bit of a tree line towards the edge of the water. And then at that halfway point, we've got like a level scree bed. I'm not sure what the geological term for it would be, but this bed of rock that you can, as I understand it, you can walk over, you can walk across. It's crisscrossed with little streaks of snow. We can see the water coming closer towards us is not very deep. We can see some of the pebbles and stones just below the surface. On the right hand side, we've got a little bit of a beach coming across from that right hand side, and behind it a bank, a retaining bank, and some of the aspen trees, those bare trees. Marcia said the photo was taken in May, so the foliage is just beginning to come onto those trees there, the emerging, the young foliage. And we've got, talking about the water, we've got those soft reflections of mainly of the mountains behind, and on the left-hand side, they're quite sort of vertical. The pattern of those reflections is quite vertical. Fazia pointed that out. Another good observation. So fairly soft reflections, and then in the immediate foreground, those random placing of stones and boulders, another dimension to the scene. And quite a few of them are light, with a dark shadow on the right hand side, because the sun is way up there in the top left hand corner, beating down on us, probably about a 45-degree angle or something like that. So those boulders have got a shadow on the right hand side. And we might try, I'm not sure about this, but might try and suggest a little bit of movement in the water. Another thing that we might introduce, I might introduce, as you know, I do like putting figures into my landscapes. So on that beach, trying to get a little bit of extra interest into the composition and a sense of scale, maybe a few figures. So we need to think carefully about the placement of those figures and the size of those figures. I know there were some extra suggestions of some mooses, a moose or two, entirely up to you, Patreon members, if you want to be creative there, or maybe someone kayaking across the water there. I'm going to stick to a fairly safe choice with those figures. I think that's it really on the composition. And if you've got any other questions about that, pop that into the question section. But you may want to copy or follow the photograph, Marcia's photo exactly, or just introduce your own little subtle changes there. Right, let me just stop the screen sharing. Let me now discuss my plan on this. So I'm going to be going through this complete painting session step by step along with you, starting off with my thoughts on the sequence in which I might paint the scene. Hopefully you can make this out. We've got the left-hand mountain, the right-hand mountain, that little bit of the glacier in the middle, sky, then that kind of flat scree bed, the shoreline on the right-hand side, the little beach, the bank on the right, those taller trees on the right, some of which are just piercing the sky. Then we have the water, shallow water coming towards us, and those boulders in the foreground. So I think this was quite a challenge trying to get the sequence right for this one. And we're painting generally light to dark, and for me, top to bottom, left to right, being right-handed. So I think number one will be the sky. Get that done and finish with. And then soon after that, the base color for the snow on the mountains. So look at those mountains and try and get the color of the snow. And some of the patches of snow are a little bit darker than others, where there's some recesses, or it's facing more over towards the right. So some subtle variations in the value of that snow. So snow left and right. Then we have the scree bed, number 3, and the base color for the reflection of the sky. Still keeping with stage 3, the bed on the right hand side and that bank as well. Got a little bit of grass and vegetation just coming over the top of that bank and just going down a little bit to the beach. So that's number 3. Then number 4. So by the time I finish number 3, the top half of the composition should be fairly dry. So I can then go in with the darks, those rocks, the exposed rocks that we can see, and try and observe the pattern of those rocks, because they're going to explain the gradient, particularly on that left-hand side. There's some interesting shapes on the left-hand side, that sort of angle, and some exposed rocks here. The rock shapes have a sort of curved shape on the left-hand side of the glacier, just where the glacier it's got a dome top to it as it's coming down. So it's a little bit shallow, a little bit lower on the sides. and then a lot of darker rocks down towards the bottom, and then we hit the edge of the trees. The tops of trees are green with that foliage coming out, and then the middle of the trees, they're sort of a light grayish brown, and then down towards the bottom of the trees where we hit the water's edge, that's where it gets a little bit darker. So trying to think about that as well. Then I will be doing for continuing on with the reflections, and 5 defining those boulders in the foreground. So that's the plan for me. Of course, it's entirely up to you if you want to do things differently. I generally, with my first wash, generally cover the whole scene, which I'm sort of doing in this one, covering up the whole of the scene, except for try and look at the photo and see where the brightest lights are. Some of the little snowy peaks on that left-hand side, quite light on the right-hand side at the very top, maybe a little bit lighter. There's a run of snow, a little layer of snow just on the water's edge here. So try and observe that. Keep preserve the white of the paper, but everything else is pretty much going to be covered in that first phase. So hopefully I will stick to that plan with little deviation from it. But please, I apologise if I do make a little deviation. I sort of think of things on the go. Materials wise, I recommend using good quality watercolor paper. I'm using Saunders Waterford cold press 300 grams, 140 pounds weight paper. So it's medium roughness, medium texture, 15 inches by 11 inches. Paints are from Mark Chapman in the UK. Good quality. So again, I recommend getting good quality professional grade paints. This is tube paint. Normal palette here, hasn't changed for years. Neutral tint, burnt umber, burnt sienna. Some of these I won't be using. Got a fairly limited palette today with this one. Where was it? Burnt sienna, yellow ochre, spring green, viridian green, cobalt green. I was thinking about using a little bit of cobalt green, possibly for that glacier, where we've got the front edge coming down, maybe a little bit of that green to give a sort of translucent feeling to it with some soft edges. Cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium red. Yeah, alizarin crimson, cadmium red. We've got light red there, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, lavender, and a yellowy gouache color and a white gouache in that bottom right hand corner. A couple of 3 mixing wells there. And brushes wise, I'll introduce those in a bit more detail, but most of the painting will be done with my mop brush. I'm using a synthetic mop brush. This is from Tintoretto, synthetic brush, and their series 1407, number 6. And I might be using this flat brush for the rocks in the background and possibly a little bit of the dark bottom of the trees, possibly with that one. If I can't do it with that, I might resort to the flat brush and my certain technique I use there for getting a hard and soft edge with that. Then I've got a medium size synthetic round brush. Every manufacturer does those. And then from Lebenson, a rigger brush, possibly for doing those tree trunks, the bare tree trunks that we can see of those aspen trees. Right, so the whole session is being recorded as well automatically, and I will do a YouTube version as well. So you will be able to play this back on the Crowdcast app on your mobile or via your browser. And if you wait a little bit, those of you on here live, wait a little bit, I'll create a YouTube version for you. I know some of you like to view it in that format with the captions and the different languages that YouTube are providing automatically. So just be a little bit patient for that to be created as well for you. And at the end, I will go through the submission process for you, for those of you on a critique level on Patreon, to get your individual video critique from me. And we'll have that share your work towards the end as well. That won't be on YouTube, but that'll be more of a private session for those of you on here live. Right, let me just see if there's any questions. Don't think there is. Right, let me just double check for questions. Oh, Mark started late. I was just going to watch. All right, Mark. Copping out of doing the getting the painting, following me on the painting session. Doesn't matter. All right, then. Important drawing first, then. Trying to get the shapes right of the, excuse me, I'm just trying to, on my second monitor, just get my source photo up and of the right size. So important thing here is following my plans of the thumbnail sketch and putting that to paper here, getting in the main shapes of those mountains, the glacier, that all important shoreline, and some of those boulders, those key boulders as well in the bottom towards the foreground. Right, so first of all then, let me get in the shoreline, the distant shoreline, which in the photo is just a little bit above the halfway line. So my halfway point's about there. So let's put it around about there. And on the left-hand side, it meets a little sort of headland of land that comes down from the right-hand mountains. So that's coming down like that. We've got the left-hand mountains. Try and get in a bit of a natural edge to the profile of those mountains. The glacier with a fairly horizontal top to it, and then almost a vertical left-hand side to the glacier. And then it tucks in behind the right-hand mountain, which goes away up into that top right corner. So continuing now on the right-hand side, the bottom of the trees where they hit the lake, and a fairly horizontal line coming across. I sometimes with horizontal lines do a little bit of a dash just to make sure I'm on the right. I'm appearing to be fairly horizontal, and then I might commit by making that line a little bit harder, a little bit darker, just to see what I'm doing. So fingers crossed that looks fairly horizontal. Now on the right hand side we've got that bank sloping down, a little bit of a level top to it. Of course it does go up ever so slightly to the right, and then at the back of that beach we've got the shingle that meets the bank, little bit of snow there, and then the edge of the beach, something like that, down to there's a lovely boulder here, quite a light boulder here. So let's get in that boulder and try and make it three-dimensional. Quite a light boulder there, just on the shoreline, and then the water sort of rushes away, drains away to the right, to the bottom right corner. Now back over on the left-hand side, let's do a few more key boulders over here. And all sorts of different sizes. Connect some of these boulders as well. Don't have them like I've done there. Try and connect them a little bit. There's quite a nice sort of darker round boulder there in the middle-ish, and then a few more boulders coming down. Let's get in one or two more, different shapes, different sizes, some rounded, some a little bit more squarish and hard corners. Let's get another one in there. All right. Accidentally, when I put in my wash, I might create some extra little boulders and stones down there. I suppose the last things to get in is the edge of the scree, this flat bed of rock, all this rubble that has been deposited in this lake area here, and the edge of that, which is a combination of this rubble or big boulders, and then patches of that snow that I guess is, with it being May, it's gradually melting. And then that sort of ledge of snow goes over to the right. Some key areas of rocks. So there's a triangle bit of rock there. There's some rocks there, and then towards the bottom of the left-hand mountain, some darker rocks there. So this is going to be fairly dark. And on the right-hand side, we've got the edge of the trees, starting fairly low in the distance. And I guess over here, this is going to be a little bit closer to us. But talking about these dark rocks, there seems to be less snow on that right-hand side. So more of those patches of rock. As you can see, I don't have a lot of space for the sky, and I will keep that fairly simple with some. I'll try and suggest a few clouds when I come to do the painting. The reflections, so the right-hand edge of the left-hand mountains is sort of there, and those reflections come around. So that's going to be fairly dark in there. And then on the right hand side, this is fairly dark. Or if you zoom into the photo, it's almost like a bluey grey in there behind the trees. But that darkness is being reflected something like that. So we've got the light of the shoreline, that pebbly beach, then the dark of the reflection there, and then the light, this area here is fairly light, reflecting the sky and the glacier. Actually, we can't really see the top of that glacier, but as I said in the intro, I'm going to try and get the blue sky coming down to meet the snowy edge and that glacier, so that we might be able to see a little bit of a soft edge of the glacier, the top edge somewhere down here. It's going to be, yeah, somewhere where I'm mucking about with my pencil, somewhere down there. Figures. We were going to have some figures, weren't we? Now, I could draw them in now, but I'll draw one in for you, and then I will make them up basically towards the end, when I've completed the area around those figures, going with some darker figures. But size-wise, and we discussed this on our Zoom call yesterday, what the size would be, and we shared some additional photos from Marcia of some figures in the scene when they were trekking across this landscape. So we've got an idea of the scale of the area here, the mountains behind. There were little tiny figures here, really tiny, over on this sort of rocky bed here. They were literally like just well, if I drew them in, it'd be something like that. That would be the size of a figure in the distance. Over here, though, thinking about we're fairly level here. Where we are, it's fairly level, and the tops of the head. So I think it'd be quite interesting to have a figure where the top of the head is above that shoreline. All right, and thinking about a balance the composition, so not too far over the right, not in the middle. Someone suggested a figure fishing, but I doubt whether there'd be many fish in this water, but there might be. Anyway, so a figure roughly something like that. If you can make that out. And of course, being a sunny day, with the light in that top left corner coming down, we've got a bit of a shadow appearing behind that figure as well. All right, maybe we can try and suggest a little bit of a backpack or something like that figure, and with some warm clothing on as well. Right, that's the drawing done then. Next step will be, let's go back to the plan. Next step will be starting in sequence, the laying down those base colors, the wash, the all-important color of the snow as well. Most of this is going to be done with my mop brush, so invest in a good mop brush, or I say invest. Some of the synthetic mop brushes are a lot less money than the natural hairs. So this one's pretty good, and say tinted to size 6. Good. It's got a good point to it. You can almost do the whole painting with this because you've got that good point. You get a good edge as well to it. Quite a versatile brush. Right, let's get in. Let's do the sky then, and the suggestion of some soft clouds in the sky. Now, I'm just laying down some clear water here, up to the edge of the mountains, because I do want certain areas of the mountains to be left as paper. That's the brightest snow. And the color of the sky, then I think it's going to be a little bit of cobalt blue and a little bit of lavender. Or if you haven't got lavender, use a bit of ultramarine blue. Actually, let me do that. Ultramarine blue and cobalt blue. Give it a good mix. And then do a little test. Down to the edge of those mountains. A little bit lighter towards the horizon. You just got to do this sort of fairly quick. Try and make the shapes of the clouds as natural as possible. I can use the side of this brush as well. Then continue over to the right hand side, up to the edge of those mountains. Over to the edge of the paper, and then just leave it. Whatever's happened, it will be. So we've got some soft edges appearing where there was more water, where I laid down. I missed some areas of the paper with my clear water wash. We've got some harder edges appearing there. Doesn't matter, just leave it. I'm going to leave a little bit of color in the glacier just for a minute. I'm now going to do the base color of the mountains, and that is going to be, I'm just going to zoom into the photo here. What color is it going to be? It's a sort of, well, more of a grayish color, not blue as such. Maybe a tiny bit of blue. Yeah, so just sort of pay a little bit of attention to some of the underlying color of that snow. Right, let's stick with this mixing area here and put in a little bit of burnt sienna. So going for that sort of grayish color. And now with the tip of my brush, trying to get the feeling of the flow of that snow coming down. If you look at it, it's almost like it's fluid and it's sort of in motion coming down. Be very careful going up against the sky. Don't go too dark with this, but yeah, go very careful up against that edge. Don't want that to bleed into the sky and down to the edge. Let's go all the way. And then over on the right hand side, again, we're just trying to cover. Just trying to cover the main areas of this mountain, but leaving exposed. I'm trying to get a soft edge here where we've got that light area of snow up there. Might be just a few patches of snow on there. A lot of this area I'm going to be going over again with the rock color, but this is just to cover this up with a sort of grayish blue. Let's come down to the tree line. And those trees, they're going to be more of a sort of browny color. I'm going to mix a little bit of lavender with that burnt sienna to get the color, that sort of middle value color of the trees. Lavender. So I'm almost going a little bit opaque here with this color for those trees. Down to the shoreline of the lake. Now we've got we've got to create now the color of the this rocky base that's going across the lake here, and that gray is a little bit darker. If I gone a little bit too dark for some of this. Don't want to go too dark with some of that snow. Yeah, it's a little bit darker than that, all right, for these rocks. Again, I'm going to use a lavender, or you could use a blue with a brown, just to try and get that grayish color. And these, you need to go a little bit darker. These streaks going across, using the edge of my brush here. These streaks going across, they are in between little patches of snow, little streaks of snow. So this is where the edge of my brush is quite useful. Right. Now for the base color for the rocks, the beach, the bank, the rocks, and the water. The base color for the water. So first of all, a little bit of a darker, so that's the reflection of the glacier. And then I'll keep my options open by painting around some of these boulders. This is just really covering up the paper here. And then the rocks on this far side come down to the shoreline. I'm using the side of the brush here just so that I can leave just a few little areas of the beach exposed. Could be some lighter pebbles, perhaps little patches of snow. The bank and that was going to be a little patch of snow there. So just lift that off again. Little patch of snow. Then the top of the bank here, it's got a little bit of green on it. So a weak wash of a light green. Like that. Right, now for the reflection of the sky. And a little bit of blue around those boulders. And we'll just go up to the edge of that snow. In there will be a little bit darker. So we've got the lightness of that beach. We'll add a little bit more texture and definition to that. Paint around these boulders. Right, a little bit of colour for this glacier, the edge of the glacier, which I thought a sort of greeny blue would work quite well. I need a soft edge, so, and if you zoom into the photo of the glacier, it's got quite a few soft edges there. Thinking about the direction of the sunlight as well. Keep the top fairly light, and then a little bit of this cobalt green, or you could, I guess you could use a little bit of viridian green and a bit of blue. Yeah, this cobalt green could work quite well. So this is the bottom of the glacier, and then a little bit of few sort of crevices on that right hand side, but a mixture of hard and soft edges. Don't go too dark on that. We want it to, you want to give it some form, as if it's sort of just coming down towards us, sloping down, flowing down towards the gap between these two mountains. Right. Let me just check if there's any questions. Oh, size of paper. Jada, yeah, John and Dave, that's right. 11 by 15. All right, my normal size, quarter imperial. Right, so back to the plans. So we've pretty much done 1, 2, and 3. Now we're starting to apply the darks, and we need to do the trees as well. A little bit more definition to the trees, the top and the bottom of the trees. I'm going to still stick with my mop brush here because I've got a good point to it. I could use a small synthetic round for this, but there are some large areas of darks down the base here and on the right hand mountain. I think this is going to be easier, and also with that point, hopefully we create some nice interesting marks for the rock where it's exposed. Right, something dark then. And what are the color of those rocks? Well, there's browns in there, there's bluey grays. So I think a mixture of, for me, burnt sienna, little bit of neutral tint or Payne's grey if you've got that, and we'll come down to the lavender as well. There's quite blue in there. Right. Burnt umber, neutral tint, burnt umber, neutral tint, and just a few little marks just to see that I'm on the right lines with these shapes. And I could, in certain areas, I could just soften up some of the edges as well. I think with this, don't overthink it. Just go for it. There's a soft edge at the bottom of this rocky area here. Now moving slightly over to the right-hand side. We're suggesting the slope, the steep sides of this side of the mountain. As I'm doing this, I'm constantly looking at the photo just for a bit of guidance and inspiration. Let's just continue a little bit of a slope down here. And then there's a rocky area there and a rocky area here and here. Now, as I come down, try and vary the intensity of those darks so that you get little variations of lighter areas where it's catching the light and darker areas. And then we're coming to the edge of the lake here, pick up a bit of lavender. And a good bit darker. It's actually quite dark there against the lighter trees. So almost neutral tint there. And where you see it, there are just a few little specks of the rocks. Here and there. Right, we might come back to that. Right, now trees and the rocks on the right-hand side. Now, these rocks are a tiny bit lighter than on the left-hand side. Just when I think about it, just soften up some of those edges. Or if you've got it, you can dampen a tissue a little bit. That will help you get some softer edges. Right-hand side then, and maybe a little bit more lavender with this right-hand side. I'll start over here on the right, because as I come down to here, I want this area to be dry so the dark doesn't bleed into the lighter color for the trees. So over to the right-hand side, and same as we're doing on the left, just look at the photo, just pick up on little patches of the rocks. Start on the edge of the paper, come over. And then just against the sky here, we've got start of some larger rock areas. Might go in some of these light areas with a very small brush just to pick up on a few more smaller patches of rock. Continuing down into this little headland here, down to the tops of the trees, which we'll come on to in a minute. This is that patch of rock that was quite blue when you zoom into it. Could push that a little bit, pick up some cerulean. Then just complete this rocky area. Picking up some darker, thicker pigment, less water on my brush. Right, those trees which have got that young foliage just emerging on the top of their canopy. Then we got that grayish color. Then we go darker towards the shoreline. So it's kind of three things going on there. Right, first of all, then a little bit of green. Right, what green's that going to be? Well, perhaps a bit of spring green. Not too bright with this green. And let's just see how we get on with that. I think that's all right. So suggesting the varying height of these trees as well. A bit more water. Suggesting the varying height of these trees. So with the brush, go up and meet that darker. It might need to go a little bit darker in a few places. And now coming to the middle color, the middle value of those trees, which is going to be a sort of, well, it's almost like what we're doing with the rocks. Sort of lavender and a burnt sienna, a little bit of blue with the brown. That middle area. Now it does need to be a bit lighter. and then darker towards the base. So burnt umber, bit of neutral tint. Not too dark. And we'll try and make them a bit more tree-like with some lighter vertical marks for the tree trunks. But I'm just trying to get in those kind of those three things going on with the trees: the foliage at the top, then the exposed branches, and then this darker base to those trees. I keep my horizontal, my strong horizontal. Over to the bank and a little bit of light on the edge of that bank where it's catching the sunlight, and then over to the right hand side. There we go. No, this bank has got some dark sort of foliage and stuff sort of coming down. Again, just soften some of those edges. Don't make them too hard. Okay. So far, so good, I think. Now, a little bit of darkness on just defining the edge of these strips of rock just a little bit more. Some of them darker than others. This little bit of snow. It's got an edge to it. So this is the water's edge now. And then going over to the right hand side. Don't want that to stand out too much. All right. Next will be the darker reflections left and right, again coming down to those boulders. Try and define this shoreline a little bit more as well. Now for this, I want to try and keep those reflections fairly soft. Color wise, again, it's blues and browns. It's that sort of combination. Page around those boulders again. And on the right hand side, now this to me looks a little warmer. The darker reflection there looks a little bit warmer. So a bit more burnt sienna over here. And value-wise, darker than the shoreline. Again, maybe just leave a few areas exposed. They could be little boulders peeping up above the surface. Now I want to suggest on the edge of this reflection, just a little bit of disturbance in the water. And this sort of brush with that shape of the head is quite good for this. Around those boulders, up to the shoreline. Probably a little bit more solid in places, not have too many of those lighter shapes. Don't overdo it. Right, bit darker. Over to the shoreline. Now, I picked up a bit of blue just on the water's edge. It does go where the water is kind of soaking into those pebbles on the beach. We've got a little bit of coolness, a little bit of the feeling of wet, damp stones. So go around those. Then is the runoff of the water down to that bottom right corner. I guess just picking up on a bit of the reflection of the sky as well. Now I need to colour in this area as well. And that's going to be a little bit lighter, but we've got these little stones and pebbles just below the surface. So while it's damp here, maybe I can drop in some extra colours of the lighter pebbles just to suggest that. First of all, water. Around those pebbles. And go a little bit lighter. Just introduce some different colors in here. So I've just picked up a little bit of blue. And then while this area is still quite damp, we can drop in some darker, thicker colors just to suggest some of those lighter pebbles below the surface. Now, while I'm just waiting that to dry a bit, I'm just going over, trying to create a bit more texture to our beach over here on the right hand side. And some of those pebbles are bluer. So a little bit of cerulean blue, or a blue. And these marks, try and make them a little bit larger as we come over to that right hand side as they come closer to us. You could use, I guess you could use a little bit of splattering here. Also, some of these lighter areas where you see a lighter, you could go a little bit darker just behind it, just to create the feeling of a bit of a shadow, a bit more of a definition to that shape. Cerulean blue. Still want to try and keep the feeling of that beach fairly level as well, not too steep. So just a few little marks to suggest those small little pebbles and boulders. Right, this now is damp. Let's go in with maybe a bit of yellow ochre. See how that. Few little dabs of that. Maybe some darker ones over here. And some blue. Over here, the paper's dried just a little bit too much. Okay, next. Right, while this is all drying a little bit, I'm going to return to the mountains just to try and get a bit of extra definition to those rocks. And that's where I think I'm going to use my 1/2 inch flat round brush here just to get in a bit more of a definition to those shadows. So here, just create the feeling of that curved. That bit of a curve there, where it's a little bit low on the left-hand side. Right, these rocks on the left-hand side, something fairly dark, and now just pick up on a few darker areas just to emphasize them a little bit more. Like that. And we'll make the shoreline a bit darker, push the contrast. Push the contrast just a little bit more here. That's better. Now, pops those trees. And a little bit similar technique to the water's edge. Just a little bit. So start at the bottom, quickly drag up, we get that, hopefully the effect of that base, that darker base. Bit more definition to the water's edge here. And then just here we've got the reflection of the snow. Next, right. Define these boulders a bit more. So I've kept them light, so that's given me a few more options as regards what color I'm going to make them. If you look at the boulders, they're quite light against the water around them, and they've got, where the water might have lapped over them a bit, they're a little bit darker towards the water's edge, and then darker still on the right hand side of that. Let's see if we can do that. So I'll make them a little bit darker than what we've got here. Some of them I'll keep light. This one here is darker. Darker at the top. And just make them a little bit darker. Now going a little bit darker on the right hand side. Neutral tint, burnt umber. Bit of ultramarine blue. A little dark little dark side to that big boulder. And then dark there. Gradually taking shape. As I was doing on the shoreline, some of these lighter areas here just add a bit of shadow to the right hand side, and that will hopefully create the impression of some smaller boulders. Some of these dabs of color that I put into the water to try and create the illusion of underwater pebbles. There's a little bit of around the side, a little bit of darkness just to make them stand out a bit more. Ideally, you do this when the paper is still damp, because then you'll get a soft edge to that dark border between these, between those pebbles below the surface. And picking up on some of those vertical reflections. What's next? I've got the figure to do. A little bit more to the water here. I make this edge a little bit softer. All right, figure. I use my small synthetic round brush for this, and I can just about make out the figure in there. Let's go fairly dark with this one, and fairly thick with my paint, not too much water. Right, so head is around about there. then there's the torso. And then I imagine this person will be wearing fairly thick clothing, boots as well. And a bit of a shadow. Let's put in another figure. And another one. And another little shadow. So distant figures, maybe not too much of a shadow. Let's give our figure here some bit of skin color. Ideally do that when it's a bit drier. Right, tree trunks, and then I'm about done. So tree trunks, rig a brush, something like, I'm using a white gouache here in my palette that is not, it's sort of lost its bright white color because I've over the previous paintings, I've added some darker colors to it for different effects to go opaque or milky with certain things now. Just in a few places, and hopefully you've got a brush with a good point. Just in a few places here. And they're going to stand out more as we come over to the right hand side. Just really, we're noticing them in that middle area of their height, not so much at the base, not at the tip. Now, the ones on the right are taller still, and they're going to stand out a lot more because of the darker background, of course. Some of these have some side lateral shoots as well. I make them a bit random as regards their spacing. And then just in a few places, we got a few little laterals appearing. And then some of these trees, they're just touching, they're just connecting with the sky. Just a few. Nearly there. Right, just a few more marks, I think. I need to, the shoreline, I'm not totally convinced with some of these marks here, so I just need to play around with that a bit more. Might do a little bit of splattering on this right hand side a little bit later. Probably not now. I'll muck up my camera, and the mic, it'll go all over the microphone. So a few more dots, particularly in this foreground, not so much here. Keep that fairly flat with the colors. Now, we've got this little strip of snow here, and there's quite a nice reflection of that snow in the water. I'm going to use, what brush could I use for this? Perhaps my little flat brush. Now I was using it for that dark paint, so I'm just going to make sure it's well and truly clean. I think that's all right. So white, flat brush, white. If you've got a smaller and narrower flat brush, that would be better, I think. And it doesn't have to be brilliant white. So just in a few places. Just a little bit, don't overdo it. I think I'm nearly done. Just check everything. Maybe that edge there could be softened up a little bit. It's a bit of a harsh edge there. I want to get the profile of those trees right. Those vertical trunks. Picking up on some of these lighter areas, could be made into little stones, just going in behind them. Yeah. Right. Of course, some of these lying in the water, they could have just a little bit of a dark water line to them. There's a stone there. There. I need a bit more in the snow up here. Well, I will just add a few more little marks to this in my own time. But I think I've captured the essence of it. Perhaps just a few more marks here just to show that it's that kind of rough. There's rocks and boulders and things over there. I make these reflections a little bit better. Here we go. I think this guy here has got a bit of a peak cap. There we go. Right. I think I am done. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I am very much looking forward to seeing your paintings, those of you on the critique level. And if any of you would like to, anybody that's been painting along, if you'd like to share what you've been up to, then I can click a few buttons my end and invite you on screen.